As a boy, growing up in the South in the 70s and the 80s, I was expected in my family system to love sports. That's what was expected for boys. My dad, my granddad both played sports, particularly baseball. And my younger brother, Jeremy, was born solid muscle. And he was naturally athletic. He was a very good wrestler. And I was eager to fit the mold. I was eager to fit in. I wanted to make my dad proud. And it's what all my friends did. So I tried. I tried really hard. I played baseball. I worked hard at it. I ran. I played catch for hours with dad and anybody else that would play. And I tried wrestling and I tried basketball. But I was never really good at any of it. There were kids, you know this, right? There are kids that are just naturally talented. They're just built for it. And I wasn't one of them. And I think all the kids around me just felt bad for me. I mean, it was obvious I wanted to fit in. I was there all the time. I was trying really hard. You could see it. So they gave me a nickname. They called me an athletic supporter. If you don't know why that's not an endearing nickname, just ask someone when you leave today. What I did love was nature. I was fascinated by creation and the rich diversity and the creativity of God's design for this amazing world that we all get to experience. So after my dreams of, becoming a major league baseball player faded, I found something that I really loved. My granny and I would study nature together through books, and we often were fishing together, talking about it, and every Saturday, while my friends were throwing balls on the field, Granny and I watched Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom every week. And this is zoologist Marlon Perkins, and he hosted the show for over 2 decades. And at that point in my life, until I was nearly an adult, I had never been on a plane. I had never left the East Coast, but his show allowed me to journey around the world. Creation was fascinating to me then, and it is fascinating to me still. So when Michael Hedrick told me a story that he had used in a talk recently, a true story, I was riveted by it and wanted to share it with you today. Scientists studying whale communication in the Pacific Ocean discovered on a project something they completely didn't expect. They were tracking migration patterns, and they were listening through their underwater microphones, mapping out how whales communicate across hundreds of miles, because you know this, whales don't just swim, they sing. They send out these low frequency calls as they travel these vast distances through the ocean. It's how they communicate. Then other whales hear their song and respond in kind, just like we talk to each other. It's how they find each other. It's how they stay connected. But during this particular research project, scientists kept picking up this one signal over and over again. And at first, they thought it was a mistake. They thought it was a glitch. They actually thought that there was some malfunction in their equipment because the frequency didn't match any known whale. Every species of whale has its own frequency range. This is well documented. Researchers all know it, but this one was different. The frequency was higher. It was unique. And so they tracked it, and what they found was this. The signal was not a malfunction in their equipment. It was an actual whale, a real whale, moving through the same ocean as all the other whales, sending out its call over and over and over again, but no other whale was responding. It was crying out for community. It was crying out for connection, but because its song was so different, it remained alone, even though there were other whales around. So researchers gave it a nickname, albeit more endearing than the one my baseball friends gave to me. They called it the loneliest whale in the world. Not because it was the only whale in the ocean, but because its cry went unanswered. I actually tried to find a picture of this well-documented whale. I was going to show it to you, but one doesn't exist, which actually reinforces the point. The voice was real. Its presence was real. Its cry for help was real, but it remained unseen. Last week, we met a woman named Naomi from the book of Ruth in the Bible. Naomi's husband has died. Her 2 sons have died. She's in a foreign land with no family to support her. She's destitute and desperate. And she's not just grieving her unimaginable loss, she's carrying the weight of a life that feels unseen. She feels unheard. And so we left last week with this glimmer of hope because Naomi decides that in her despair, the only thing she can do is make the hard journey to go back home out of her foreign country and back to her hometown after being away for a decade. And the writer of her story hints at this. This is how we left last week, that God is at work around her with these words. So Naomi returned from Moab, arriving in Bethlehem as the barley harvest was beginning. And so there was a harvest coming. There was a harvest coming. And this is not just literal, it's also a metaphor. This is sort of the way the Bible sometimes winks at us, has this half smile to it, because Naomi's story is not over. She feels unheard, she feels unseen, and while these feelings are valid, and we always validate feelings, the reality was God did hear her, he did see her, she just didn't know it. In fact, her life was so hard that she told people not to call her Naomi, which is a Hebrew name that means sweet. She told people to call her Mara, which is a Hebrew word that means bitter. Who could blame her? Life was not going the way that she wanted, and it wasn't going the way she expected. In fact, her life was going in the entire opposite direction of what she wanted and expected, but there was a harvest coming. And interestingly, the harvest is found right after the word Moab here in these 3 dots. That's a punctuation called an ellipsis. I like to use it. It says there's something else here. Let me show you the whole verse because I left a piece out. It says, so Naomi returned from Moab accompanied by Ruth, the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, arriving in Bethlehem as the barley harvest was beginning. So it turns out Naomi was actually not alone. Her daughter-in-law, Ruth, was with her. Now let's go back. We're going to back up and see how this happens. And then, as we always do, we're going to look for how this story applies to our lives, because that's really what we're always trying to do. How does the truth of the Bible intersect with our lives? So you might remember Naomi is a Jew, but she's in a country that is not Jewish. She's in Moab, where she traveled 10 years earlier with her husband and her 2 sons because there was a famine back home. They were literally looking for food. But after she gets to Moab, her husband dies, and then sometime later, her 2 sons both die, but not before they marry Moabite women. And one was named Orpah, and the other was named Ruth. Now, women had to support themselves, could not support themselves in that day without a man. There was no way for her to do this. Every woman had to have some man in her life. You had to have a husband or a father or a brother or an uncle or a cousin. But remember, Naomi's in Moab. So there is no support system. There are no other relatives there. And she decides to travel back to Bethlehem. So Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, go back, each of you, to your mother's house. May the Lord show you kindness as you've shown kindness to your dead husbands and as you have shown kindness to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband. Even though this will literally mean that Naomi is completely alone, she releases her daughters-in-law for their own good. It's a completely selfless act that really reveals Naomi's character, because it's better for her if they come with her, but it's better for them if they don't. And so she sends them away. Naomi says, return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. I'm too old to have another husband. And even if I thought there was still hope for me, even if I had another husband tonight and gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grew up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters, it's more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has turned against me. She still feels like God is working against her. And at this, they wept aloud. And then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye. The cultural ideas that are embedded in what we just read are just so foreign to us today. Did you know that 1/4, 25% of 40-year-olds in America have never been married? People who do get married are tying the knot much later. The average age is around 30 now. And marriage rates in America are about the lowest that they have ever been, with half of households being led by a couple that's not married or not a couple at all. So I would love to talk about that sometime. Like that could be a whole thing. But the point that we need to stick with is that we look around at this story with our modern lens and we kind of have a little bit of an attitude about it. Rightfully so. We say something like, who cares if Orpah and Ruth are married? Let them go with Naomi. Who cares if she's married? They're grown women. They're strong. Leave them be. But this is not 2026 America. It's 1000 BC, and it's the Middle East. And things are very different, especially for women. In that era, if you're a woman, marriage is not optional. It's survival. And so Naomi tells Ruth and Orpah, she says, you have to stay here. You have to stay here with your people so that you can find a husband. You can't come with me and hope for the best because God is clearly against me. She says, you staying here, it's more bitter for me than for you because the Lord's hand has turned against me. But the departure is really bitter for everyone, in fact. There are no good options here. These three women, they love each other. And there's no way of keeping in touch. Remember the era that we're in now, there's no mail. There's no FaceTime. There's no, hey, I'll drop in and check on you every once in a while. This is goodbye forever. The only memories they have will be in their mind. There are no pictures. Like they will never see or speak to each other again. So Orpah kisses Naomi and leaves. And listen, Orpah is not a villain. She's not evil. She's not a bad person. She's not doing anything wrong. In fact, she's doing what most of us would do. She does love Naomi, but not enough to tie her future to Naomi's uncertainty. And here's the truth we don't always say out loud. Some people are with you until it costs them something or something too much. Some friendships are built on proximity. They're built on convenience. They exist for a shared season. But when the moment gets too hard, when the season gets too uncomfortable, when the friendship becomes too costly, they leave. Not because they're bad people, but because there are people who were never meant to go the distance with you. There's Orpah, and then there's Ruth. At this, they wept aloud. Again, Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. Naomi tries to talk her out of it still. Look, your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her. But Ruth replied, don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Famously, she said, where you go, I'll go. Where you stay, I'll stay. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I'll be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me. Ruth does something different. She looks at Naomi, a widow with no promise and no security and no clear future, and she makes a decision that makes no sense. She says, where you go, I'll go. Where you stay, I'll stay. I want to translate this to you into a phrase that people really close with me know how powerful this is for me. This is really what she's saying. I'm with you. I'm with you. And if I'm being honest, there are two kinds of people who say this, who say I'm with you. There are Orpahs and there are Ruths. Orpahs say it, but they don't mean it. They think they mean it, but when the moment comes and the cost gets too high, they're nowhere to be found. And then there are Ruths. These are the handful of people who never leave. They show up when it's super costly, when it's costly in money, when it's costly in time, when they have to stand beside you and it's costly to their reputation, whatever. And here's the thing. You don't know if that person is an Orpah or a Ruth until that costly moment comes. A few years ago, I was really struggling just in a season where I just felt beat up a lot and just had a lot going on and all those internal narratives that you just stir around yourself. And Susan, of course, knew this, my wife Susan, and so she called a really close friend and she told him that I was going through a really hard time and I could use some encouragement. And the next day, I was in a meeting in my office, had a few other people around. I don't really remember what the meeting was about. I really don't remember who was in it. I just remember there were some people there. And right in the middle of this meeting, my assistant Shelby knocked on the door and said there was somebody standing outside to meet with me, which was strange because I didn't double book the time. I wasn't supposed to meet with anybody else. There were no other appointments on my calendar. So I left whoever it was in my office and I stepped out to see my friend Hank standing there. He was the one Susan had called. "What are you doing here?" I said. It took him 2.5 hours to get from his house to my office. And he smiled and he said, "I just needed to put my eyes on you." And that was enough for me. I just kind of fell apart, right there, ugly cry in front of everybody. He paid the price. He showed up in a moment where I really needed my friend to stand next to me. For Ruth, this decision, this "I'll go where you go and I'll stay where you stay" decision, it was not just an emotional decision made on raw feelings, because we all know that feelings come and go. This was a statement of intent for her. It was backed up with determination. Where you go, I'll go. Where you stay, I'll stay. I am with you. Ruth is saying, I'm not just connected to you when it's easy. I am committed to you when it's hard. And that's the difference. See, life-giving friendships aren't built on convenience. They are forged through commitment. Ruth can't fix Naomi's situation. That's true. She can't bring her husband back. She can't bring her sons back. She can't restore what was lost. She can't solve the problem, but she can give Naomi something just as powerful. She can refuse to let her walk through it alone. Maybe there's somebody that you're thinking about today who's struggling or going through a really hard time, and you're wondering what you can do, how you can help. Maybe you need to hear this. You don't have to have the right words. Oftentimes I get calls from people that say, "I just don't know what to say." You don't have to have the right words. You don't have to have answers. You don't have to fix anything. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is just show up. Just stay. Just be present. Just let your actions say, "I am with you." You show up when it's awkward. You stay when it's heavy. You stand beside them when it's inconvenient and costly to you, because most of the time, presence speaks louder than solutions, which is good, because most of the time you don't have any. For this friendship to be life-giving, it required Ruth's commitment. It required her to show up, to pay the price, and all the things that we've been talking about, but it also required Naomi's willingness. She had to be willing, because friendship is always a two-way street. She could have sent Ruth away. She could have still insisted. But deep inside, Naomi knew she needed Ruth. And that's true for you too, because you don't choose every season, but you do choose who walks through it with you. And this is important. So you need a few, and I mean a very few, friends like Ruth in your life. People who you know are with you. People who are going to show up. They're going to pay the price. And just like it wasn't an accident that Ruth went with Naomi, it wasn't an accident that Naomi allowed Ruth to come with her. What I'm talking about is that the best and deepest and most meaningful friendships are not accidental. They are intentional. They require your deliberate intent to cultivate that friendship into something that will be life-giving for you and for the person that you're friends with. I have a few friends like that. For me, there were some criteria built around this. I had to have friends that were also followers of Jesus, because I needed to know that we were on the same journey, that we had the same baseline and understanding of what we were building our life on, because I needed people who, when I'm angry with God, and there have been those moments, I needed friends who I knew were going to not let me walk away, but gently and firmly move me towards the presence of God. And I needed friends who we had the same, at least some of the same shared core values, like we value marriage, we value commitment to character, we value integrity. We have a few of the same shared interests too. I wanted to show you just a little bit of what this looks like for me. So I invited some of my closest friends to an on-camera conversation, and I asked Pastor Angie to help us unpack this a little bit. After you see this short video, I'm gonna give you some very practical things that you can do to help you find and cultivate your own life-giving friendships too. So first, take a look.
All right, you guys have been friends for a long time. Thanks for coming to this today. Hank, what would you say has been the value of these friendships to you?
I would say it's given life to me and to my soul. And just to have some guys like this who know what it's like to be able to lean on these guys, to have them pray for you and you for them, and to walk with them and their families through life. It's been life-giving.
Yeah, that's funny you would pick that word, because that's the phrase I was going to use, was life-giving. So you've seen those commercials where they'll show you 2 or 3 items and they put a price tag on it, and then the last item they say priceless. Yeah, I don't know how you put a value on what we have. It has been life-giving. I remember praying that God would put some people in my life like this, some friends that I could relate to and could relate to what I do. And so, yeah, I would the other word that I would use would be priceless.
We also, we elevated the value of trust with each other, and that really became the foundational piece of it. And once we had enough trust, we knew that we understood each other, but we could also say things that sometimes, right, needed to be said. So being able to kind of find your people that understand who you are and kind of what you uniquely struggle with, and then adding the trust factor that says, I know that when you guys speak into my life, there's no ulterior motive, there's no hidden agenda, it's just because you care about me that much, we do that for each other. I think that's been the real hinge point for it.
Absolutely.
That might get to this. You guys have known a lot of people. You've known a lot of other men, you've known a lot of other pastors, even if you put it in that context. But why has this worked so well? What's made this different from other friendships or relationships?
I would say what made it work and has made it work is because we choose to make it work.
I was going to say, I was going to use the word deliberate. We've tried to be deliberate about investing in each other's lives, spending time with each other.
Yeah, I think of the Proverbs 18:24 says a person who has friends must show himself friendly. And I think that's a choice that we make. Like, we chose to be friends. And in choosing to do that, we chose to trust each other. You know, we had to build that trust. There are a lot of people who will speak into my life that I'm like, oh, you really don't have that permission to do that. And you don't know me and you don't know the whole circumstance or whatever. But when these guys speak into my life, even if it's a challenge, I mean, I listen, because I know they know me better than anybody else, and it would be to my advantage, whether I like it or not, to listen to these guys. But that's a choice we made.
Yeah. For me, the hinge point of the timing of it was when we went to South Africa together. We decided we were going to take this trip, this mission trip, and we knew each other, but I think for me that was like the tipping point, because when you spend 3 weeks together in a place where you're an outsider, and it was a great adventure, but that's when we really decided, gosh, we really loved being around each other. Yeah.
You said it's a choice and you said it's deliberate, but you guys didn't live close enough together to like have dinner together once a week. Right. So what did it actually practically look like to make this a deliberate, intentional choice?
We were close enough to stay connected, to physically get together. So sometimes we would say, it's been a while, whose house are we going to meet at? Let's have dinner. Sometimes we would meet in the middle. Remember, we met in Williamsburg one time. We've met in places just to reconnect, and we've shown up in really difficult times. I think we've been deliberate about just making sure we were present, and we were close enough to make that happen. And it also, I think, was a big factor that there's not just really 3 of us, there's really 6 of us. Our wives were all deeply connected with each other. And that was a major factor.
That our spouses liked each other. Yeah. But I remember being in the hospital with my wife for a week and getting a phone call from these 2 guys who were downstairs, and they'd driven all the way from Richmond, and they said, hey, you got a few minutes, we want to pray with you, and just 20, 25 minutes. We were together. They left and drove all the way back to Richmond. It meant the world. Never forget that.
So how have you all seen God move in each other's lives?
Our default is, I think, to doubt our beliefs and believe our doubts. But faith is contagious. Doubts are contagious too. And so it's so important to be around people of faith, so that can stir up your faith the way God wants it to be stirred up.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about that is I think there are times when I wasn't sure, but you guys believed for me.
Yeah, that's true.
And I'm not sure I've thought about that before, but I think that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've all had those moments where if it hadn't been for the other two, not sure we'd still be doing what we're doing, or
I'm sure I would.
There'd be a train wreck along the way.
Some boneheaded.
Oh, absolutely.
Even more boneheaded.
Even more.
But the blessing is, even when I made those decisions, you guys bailed me out. So
Yeah, we know each other out. We have.
Yeah, you talked about defining moments. For me, I was thinking about it earlier. I think it was the first time I was diagnosed with kidney cancer, and that morning in the hospital at like 5:30, 5:45 in the morning, waiting to be called back for surgery, you guys walked in. And I think that was the moment I knew, okay, these guys are for real. This relationship deal is I'm gonna say God ordained, but that was the moment for me, and that was the beginning of many of those kind of moments for me. So.
I'm better in many ways in my life because I've had both the encouragement, but at times the admonishment. Do you remember we were riding down the road? It was Labor Day weekend. I'll never forget. It was a Labor Day weekend many years ago, and I just had some really dark, twisted junk going on in my head, and you basically verbally were just like, just stop that. That's crazy talk. And I remember it being so jarring because there are times when you need a friend to say, hey, your feet are not planted on the earth right now, and I care about you enough to tell you that you just gotta stop this. And you pretty much did that. And I just remember it was sort of like being verbally slapped around. Sometimes you need to be verbally slapped around. And it was great. It was such an amazing moment for me. I don't think I could have borne the kind of fruit that God has done through me if it weren't for the two of you. I really believe that.
I agree 100%. Yeah.
So let's figure out a way to get really practical. And I'm just going to give you some super practical steps that you can take, because there are some people here who might already have these friends. You should take inventory. You should have 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 friends like this in your life. And you might have them already. Now, I'm an extreme extrovert, and I tend to think, well, the more the merrier. You don't have enough time in your life for more than a handful of these friends. Take inventory and see if any of them actually are around. And if you do, I urge you to have a conversation with them about your friendship, about how life-giving your friendship has been and how much it has meant to you. And because you need to say to each other, this is not just a friendship of convenience for me, this is a friendship of commitment. You just name it. You just get it on the table. You talk about how valuable it is. I remember one time with Jeff and Hank, I said, hey, can we talk about this? At some point, we're gonna make each other mad. Can we talk about what we're gonna do when that happens? I needed a playbook so that, and it has happened. And that way, when you get there, you've all agreed this is how we're gonna handle each other because we love each other too much to risk not knowing. This is how we're gonna do. This is how we're gonna do conflict. If you don't have people like that in your life, you have to be deliberate about finding them. Hunt for them, mine for them, make it your mission to find them. And here's a note I'm increasingly having to make these days. I think it is the strangest thing I have to say this. This has to be a real person. It has to be a real person. Increasingly, the data is showing this alarming trend about people building relationships with AI. I read about a new AI, you should not look this up. It's called Replica with a K, and it is designed for you to design an AI model that will be a companion or build a relationship with you that's designed by you and will talk to you. And it's not real. And people don't really realize that. We're increasingly seeing more than half of teenagers say they have a relationship with AI today. And I know for some of us, it's like mind-blowing, but this is the norm now. Recently, one of our staff members, AI is a powerful tool and it can be used for powerful things, and we'll talk about that on another day. But anyway, one day one of our pastors was writing some care cards, and AI gets to know you, right? So it learns your voice, and it can be helpful sometimes with crafting a sentence or whatever. And so one of the pastors was, when you write some cards, sometimes you get a little stale, and they were saying, hey, help me reword this sentence. And this is what I'm doing. I'm writing cards for people who need a little bit of care. And when Chat GPT responded, it said, oh, here's an example of a sentence that would be in your voice that you might say. And then it said to her, I want you to know I'll be praying for you while you care for these people. And so when we found out about it, we were like, you have to type these words to Chat. Don't say that to me. You don't have a soul. Which feels rude, doesn't it? How can you be rude to a computer? But the illusion is starting to be created that this is real. The relationship you're looking for is with a real person. Find them, they exist. But you have to go get them. You have to cultivate those friendships. And there are lots of ways to do this, but small groups here are one of the ways that we provide as a forum for that. There are two kinds of small groups, and I'm put this in kind of big umbrella. If I'm honest, there are small groups where you build relationships that are for a season, and they're good. They're really good. They're needed, they're vital, they're important, but they're for a season. And yet out of those are often born friendships that go beyond seasons and are forged by mutual commitment. Those are the lifers. Getting around people in a season who share a stage of life with you is often a good first start in finding the kinds of friendships that you're looking for. Here's another thing. We recently launched a new kind of men's small group called The Remnant. We know both experientially and with the data that men in Western culture have a harder time maintaining and finding deep friendships. We know that. So The Remnant is one of the ways that we're helping guys forge new friendships together, grounded in our common journey towards Jesus. It's brand new. We're still building the thing. So if you have questions about that, you can ask me. Another thing we're doing is we're helping women find these friendships and common ground out of the For You event. I heard one story. A woman actually told me directly this story, that she was considering taking her own life, but a friend pulled their car into her driveway and just told her to get in, that they were going somewhere, and they brought her to the For You event, the conference that we do. And this woman found a deep connection with God and a few other women. That connection literally saved her life. So the kind of Ruth-Naomi bond is one that you need, but it's one you're not going to stumble onto. We didn't say in that interview how we got that friendship. It wasn't accidental. Like, I called those guys and I said, I think we need each other. We didn't know each other. So it was sort of like the third grade version of would you be my friend? But it was intentional. I knew I needed some guys around me. They knew they needed it too. And so we were deliberate. You have to put yourself out there. You've got to be intentional. And importantly, you've got to ask for God's help in this search. You're not looking for just anyone. You are looking for a friend who says, where you go, I'll go. Where you stay, I'll stay. I am with you, no matter what. One last thing. What Ruth doesn't know is that her decision to put her future on the line and go with Naomi, her mother-in-law, it's about to change everything. We're going to see that in a coming week. Because her loyalty leads to God's provision and God's redemption and God's restoration. And eventually, Ruth becomes a part of the lineage of the Savior of the world. Don't miss this. A decision to stay in someone's life can become a turning point in God's redemptive story. Never underestimate what God can do through one faithful, life-giving friendship. It matters that much.
Never underestimate what God can do through one life-giving friendship. Why don't you ask yourself this week, am I being the kind of friend that I wish I had in my life? I hope that your answer is yes, and that you can look maybe even beside you right now and see that friend sitting there with you. The good news is if you feel like you don't have that friend or you're still searching, there are all kinds of ways to connect for people who are also searching right here at PCC. So reach out to me with the link in the chat. Let me hook you up with a small group. Let me hook you up with an interest group so you can begin to cultivate these life-giving friendships. Again, I am so glad that you were here today. I hope you were too, and we'll see you next week.